Today we are going to talk about this little known feature in Brightspace, and we want to show you this tool and how you might be able to use it to reflect, especially on a class that maybe you taught last semester and you're going to teach it again and you want to tweak something. Content reports. To access content reports, navigate to Brightspace and click into one of your courses. As I mentioned, I'm going to be looking in demo courses today. They're not real information. So I'm going to go into my course. And once you're in your course, you do need to click into content. And once you're in content, on the left-hand side, you're only going to be able to get to this if you first click on Table of Contents. And then near the middle, you're going to click Related Tools and View Reports. It's going to open a screen that shows reports. So when I come into reports, what this is showing me is the time people have spent clicking into content from the content area. So when something is listed as a topic or a module in content and that student clicks on it, it's going to register in here. So as I scroll down here, I have two tabs, content and users. In the content tab, I'm going to see every single module that I have in my course, and every topic item is listed here. And then the data available for each on the right, I will see a count of how many students this is currently available to, how many users have visited, and the average time spent. If I click into one of these numbers, either number, it shows me the same thing when I come in. Again, this is all demo data. This is going to show me for each student the last visit, the aggregate number of visits, total, and average time spent. I am going to go back and look at that last screen one more time. The other thing I can do from here is up in the top left, I can click on the Users tab, and this is going to show me similar information, but it's going to be organized by user instead of by each content topic. So if I want to see what Kyle's name, I'm going to see similar information, but specific information to that user now. So each topic and module in my course with the information for that one student.
Now that we know how to get the data, what do we do with it? What did students spend time on in this one module from this course in the syllabus? What didn't they spend time on? And how you could envision possibly using this information. This is again from a demo course. So 15 seconds only on the rubric for discussion board participation. That students had only spent about 15 seconds on that. Why could that be the case? Now, it could be the case because students maybe aren't thinking about the discussion boards when they're reading the syllabus. So we're going to talk a little bit now about findability. I'm going to start off with this great quote, "You can't use what you can't find." Findability just essentially means that any user that's coming to your site or your course page is able to find what they expect to find and what they need to find without too much difficulty. This is really important because it's going to reduce frustration for students, and it's also going to reduce cognitive load. Cognitive load theory is sort of a very big concept. There's a lot of different pieces to it, but for our purposes today, what you really want to think about is you want students spending all of their mental bandwidth on the content that you're trying to teach them. You don't want them to be spending brain power and bandwidth on trying to locate the information. So this has actually been studied, and it's been proven that if you're practicing good findability, students are actually more motivated in your course, and they have better outcomes at the end of the course when online materials are very easily accessible. So essentially, findability is about you want all of your students to be able to access all of the content in a way that allows them to engage with the content. Now that we know what findability is, how do we practice it? So there's a lot of different concepts within findability and different practices. I'm going to focus on three today that I feel like connect best to this type of data and this particular tool. So the first one is chunking. Chunking does what it says on the tin. It's exactly what it sounds like. You want to chunk out your information in pieces. So you don't want to give students a whole course in one module. That is not good findability. So here's an example of a course. It's module 5 of a course, and you can see that within this Obviously, there's at least 5 modules in this course, and within the module, there's a bunch of different subtopics: genre, counter arguments, pure critique, research argument assignment, grammar mini lesson, and an exit card. So, not just here's all the information and here's your assignment. Next concept I want to talk about is labeling. So again, a lot of these sound very obvious on their face, but if you pair them with the information that you're getting from the data, you can find ways to improve this. So labeling just means use appropriate, consistent labels and make them specific. So you don't want to have the same label, for example, for 2 different modules. Here is an example of labeling. There's 2 examples on this screen. So on the left-hand side of your screen, labeling conventions like module number colon topic. So you can see that here, module 1, introduction and discourse communities. Module 2, generative AI, rhetoric and arguments. So there's a labeling convention, so students know what to expect. They know that things are going to follow in order, that each module is going to have a number, but it's also going to be specific. It's not just going to be module 1, module 2, module 3. It's going to have extra information, a title that gives them a little bit of information if they're looking at the table of contents on what they're going to be doing week by week. Another example on the right side of your screen is to be specific when you're labeling your links. So you'll see in this GIF that to read the article, click here, and then click here has a big cross, no, don't do that through it. And it shows you an example of what is a better way to do that. Read The Rhetorical Situation by Lloyd F. Blitzer. So what you want to do is use a specific verb and a noun for each one of your links and make them different from each other. Our final findability concept today is redundancy, like I mentioned before. So you want to repeat things like instructions, links, and references, and you want to repeat them in the places where they're most appropriate. So you don't want to say things ad nauseum, right? We don't want to be constantly repeating ourselves to students or sending out a zillion announcements every semester because, quite frankly, students eventually will tune that out. So you want to be strategic about how you're being redundant. So strategic redundancy. Here are 2 examples of how to use that. So you want to use a consistent structure like we talked about before. And you can see that in this particular course, it's a Writing 102 course. Each module, so module 2 starts with a journal, and then there's a couple of subtopics, and then it ends with module 2 exit card. The same thing on the other side of this image, module 5 starts with a journal. There's a couple of topics like we saw before, and then it ends with an exit card. So this consistent structure within a module is going to help students know what to expect. Every module is going to start with a journal, every module is going to end with an exit card, and there's going to be stuff in between. On the right-hand side of your screen is an example of that redundancy with links in particular. So you want to link to pertinent content where that's appropriate. So these are instructions for an assignment for students. So you want to read The Rhetorical Situation by Lloyd F. Blitzer, and then you want to submit the activity. So those 2 hyperlinks are given right within the instructions. So we have some do's and don'ts here. These are all things that we discussed about organizing hierarchically, breaking up your topics, adding in redundancy, things you don't want to do on the right-hand side. Don't organize everything into one single folder. Don't put all the information on a topic on a single page. And definitely don't refer to previous material or assignments or ask student to do things without linking back to that content. So you want to make it easy for them to succeed. So scenarios, how can we use this? We have some ideas for you. Struggling students, you can see what they spend time on and what they didn't. Maybe they're spending too much time on something, like I mentioned before. So it's not always about, oh, you didn't spend the time. Sometimes it's like you spent 4 hours on this 4-page paper. Like, what's going on here? Maybe if you see that, it's time to pull that student in and say, hey, listen, what's going on? Do you want me to hook you up with a tutoring center, or what's the issue here? Also improving your course for next semester. So thinking about streamlining content. So if it's not being used and it's not essential, get it out of there. Streamline your course. Reorganizing some things. So George gave us a great example of how maybe he could possibly reorganize that essential information that he's giving students from previous semesters. Maybe he can put that in different places instead of all in one place. Might help with that cognitive load he's worried about for his students. And then using those modules and those subtopics strategically to track things. So if you do want to track, make sure that it is a subtopic. If it's not a subtopic, if it's buried within a page, it is not going to track it separately.
So we did some testing to kind of figure out exactly how this works. Let's say if we look back at the example of the rubric that had 15 seconds of time on it, let's say I linked to that rubric information 3 times in my course, once in the beginning, once the first time there's a discussion, and once for the second discussion. Every single time it appears as a topic, we'll have different data. So it is very specific to I clicked on this content topic here, and that's the data for that time I accessed it. So don't think that just because it says 0, it doesn't mean they didn't get to it. It just means they didn't click to it from that specific spot. If you have third party content like voice threads or echoes, if it's integrated through the LTI, then it should be counting that information. And like I said, for number 3 here, the same item added twice is going to have separate metrics. And if you're working with SCORM files, those have a separate section in this tool that can be tracked as well. So, as Christine has mentioned, if you want to see how something is being accessed, make sure that you go into your Brightspace course. So, specifically, something has to be listed in one of these topics for it to be tracked. Like Christine has said, redundancy, go ahead and add things more than once so you can find out where it's being accessed and you can make it findable and redundant for your students, and organize your content in order. So I'm going to point out that we have a slide about what's not tracked. So if you have a web page and it links out to an assignment and it links out to a discussion, you're not going to get tracking on the assignment or the discussion. You're just going to get tracking on the web page. Like we have said, if someone is clicking into an external resource and it opens up in a new tab, you won't have tracking time spent in that. If you see information like someone spent 3 minutes on an external resource, it might be because that when they came back to Brightspace, they waited on that external resource page for a while. So there's kind of a lot of little intricacies about this numbers. And maybe you're starting to see that this is informational for you. It definitely is a conversation starter, not something where you can automatically know your students are or are not doing a particular thing.